Jumped down already because I was so excited to get up there that I forgot my notes. So I'm going to run back here real quick and just grab this little thing. Well, welcome. I'm Nick May, the host of the Chaise Lounge. And I've interviewed, about 118, 150 designers and talking about the business of interior design. When I first started this, these guys weren't doing it. There was a couple of podcasts out there, and I was a podcaster. And since I've been here, I've probably gotten the question, Nick, how did you start a podcast? And I kept telling him, hey, I'm going to tell that story tomorrow. So now I'm going to tell that story. So years ago, I used to do a podcast called Small Business Naked. Does that perk you up, right? So Small Business Naked was a podcast that I did with a friend of mine. He owns a lawn care business, and I run a painting business in Denver. And we would look and we'd read stories in Inc. magazine or Success magazine or Entrepreneur, and we'd email those folks and say, hey, would you come on our podcast? And a lot of them said yes, and it was fantastic. And I learned a ton about podcasting. I learned a lot about business. Then a couple of years ago, because of my painting business, I work with designers a lot. And a lot of the designers, not all of them, especially the ones that are here in this room, I did see you come in the back, the business side of things wasn't so fantastic, right? And so I thought, I wonder if I could help, because I've been in business for a long time, about 18 years. And so I started doing some lunch and learns in Denver. And we'd bring in speakers, and we teach them the business of interior design. And I thought, hey, wouldn't it be great if I could marry those two ideas, live lunch and learns, with a podcast, which I love doing. And so now it broadened my scope. I could talk to people all over the world and interview them, and it's been fantastic. And now I've been going for about 2 years. And I will say, last year I came to the Design Bloggers Conference, and I didn't know a ton of people in the industry. I knew people in Denver, but I didn't know a whole lot of people in the industry. But this conference is special, guys. Because of this conference last year, it introduced me to people at markets, and it introduced me to a lot of bigger names, and it all became this relationship. Oh, you need to know this person, and you need to know this person. So I don't remember who was talking about this earlier, but this conference is so powerful for that, so take advantage. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the folks that I've had on the show, because I want to give you the breadth of the type of people that we have on the show. My podcast focuses on the business of interior design. And when I'm bringing on guests, I really like to think about kind of my ideal customer, if you will. The ideal listener is typically a younger designer, somebody that wants to learn. They don't know all the things. They want to become a Tom Felicia, right? So we have the folks like Tom Felicia. Then I had Taylor Spellman, and Taylor Spellman she's on television now, but she's a home stager. So about 6-8 months ago, I introduced home staging into the mix, because that really is in the interior design space. And that has been a fantastic addition to the show. I've gotten emails back from folks that listen and go, oh, I never even thought of that. Then I had Andrew Joseph on the show. And why I bring him up is that I bring industry experts on that bring value to the interior designer. And Andrew has become a friend, and he's a fantastic guy. If you don't know him, say hi to him this week. And but I bring industry experts into the show to talk about other things that designers need to know about. Jason Harris, I just had on. He owns the Design. He owns the Design Network. And I met him I didn't meet him last year at the Design Bloggers Conference, but he was here. And so we've interviewed him, and again, another industry partner down in High Point. Tyler Lynch. Anybody? I need to see a show of hands. Who knows this guy? This guy is fantastic, and I love him. And he's not an interior designer. He works for Kadaris, and he works with a lot of different interior designers on their social media. And so he's just a really great, he's probably one of my favorites that I've had on the show. And so I just wanted to bring up the fact that I had him on the show. Now, one of the other types of people that I've started to have on the show is hospitality designers. And I interviewed Studio Bunnyfish from Las Vegas when I was out in New York. And they are a fantastic architecture and interior design company that focuses on hospitality. And so we've had a lot of hospitality designers on the show now, thanks in large part to one of my sponsors, Porcelanosa. And I wanted to talk about some of the things that I've learned from some of the designers real quickly. My first designer ever was Barry Livingstone. I don't have slides for this, but I wanted to share. He shared with me about going where other people aren't and where your perfect client is. And he told stories about meeting Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, if you guys know Dwayne Johnson, flying first class. And so he flies first class a lot, and he meets a lot of his clients there. Yvonne Mead, who is from Canada, when he first got started, he moved to Canada, and he didn't know anybody, and he couldn't actually work and make money. So he started doing projects for free. And when you're new to the business, you have to do stuff that nobody else is willing to do. And he really launched his business because he was willing to do things for free. Kelly Ellis. Now, I just spent a week in Spain. I know, hard, right? With Kelly Ellis. And she's fantastic, if anybody has met her. But one of the things that she taught me, and we actually talked about it when we were in Spain with one of the other designers, is using your name as an interior designer. I've met folks that have been on my show, and they have these interior design names, and I can never remember the name of their company. I can remember their name, but I can't remember the name of their company. So that was a huge lesson. Eric Hadel. Eric was the last speaker last year at the Design Bloggers Conference, and he made a huge impact on me. And one of the things, pretty much right after the conference last year, I interviewed him right away, and we talked about pricing. For an interior designer, like that conversation is pretty key critical, and very few people are willing to go into the numbers. And so he talked about not only what does he charge per hour in Atlanta, but what does he charge when he goes to New Orleans? And it got into the nuts and bolts, and it's crazy. So it was one of my favorite conversations we ever had. And then the last one I wanted to share, Corey Damon Jenkins, which you brought up. He really talked and taught me about tenacity, and he really had just a hard life, like for a very long period of time when he was trying to get into interior design. And we get into that story on the podcast. And that guy, if you don't know anything about Corey Damon Jenkins, he's a rock star, and you're going to continue to see him do bigger and bigger and bigger things. But he is just the best person. Like that's been amazing. The other thing I wanted to say real quick about not what have I learned from individual people, but what have I learned as I've kind of taken a step back and looked at all of these things that when I've talked to designers from all over the world, is that it's all about relationships. Like relationships are so key critical, and that's again why this conference is so important, because this can be the start of some really fantastic relationships, and it just carries over. And when I've interviewed people, especially when I was in New York, when I went to New York, I interviewed like 5 different hospitality designers, and it really hit home for me that it was all about the relationships. It's all about the relationships. And the last thing I wanted to just touch on real quick, they didn't tell me to talk about this, but I know a lot of people want to know, does it make money, right? Like everybody, like that's why we're here, right? We're in business, we're doing blogging, does it make money? And I just wanted to bring up, these are the 4 companies that really sponsor my podcast, and that's how I've made money. From Design Manager, who was the very first company, I had to go out to them. Like I literally was begging, hey, have you heard of a podcast? Do you know what a podcast is? And they've been a fantastic partner since the beginning. My most recent sponsor, I didn't go chase, which I think is very interesting. Porcelanosa started listening to my show, and the VP of marketing here in the United States called me and said, we really love what you're doing, and I think we'd like to be a part of it. And by the way, Nick, if you're going to talk about us, like you talk about your other sponsors on the show, we need to have you come out to Spain. Is that okay? And I thought, just twist a little bit harder, And so I just literally got back on Friday from spending a week in Spain with Porcelanosa. They treated us like just kings and queens, and it was the most fantastic. But what I'm taking away from that trip, not only did I learn a lot about the company, but the relationships that went on that trip were just the most amazing things. Now we're doing, the Facebook posts and the inside jokes and all that kind of stuff. But that's why I love podcasting, because it has brought me to corners of this world that I never would have thought it would have brought me to. And it's introduced me to people that I would never have met. When I was sitting in Porcelanosa's showroom in New York, which is right outside the Flatiron building, I'm sitting in their office and I'm interviewing people, and I'm just like, pinch me. I'm a paint contractor, right? Like, how did this happen? So, again, to James's point, if I could do it, anybody could do it, right? And that's me.
I know we really want to get to your questions immediately. I have one question of my own before we start into those. Is the podcast the new blog, and should we all have one? I know, James, you addressed a little bit of that, but
I'll jump in
please do.
If that's okay. Are you hearing me? Yeah, there we go. Is the podcast the new blog? I think it very much could be. I don't think blogging is going to go away. It's too much of a force in our culture and in our business life. But if you roll the tapes back and you think about the conversations around blogging 7, 8, 10 years ago, they're the very same conversations people are having about podcasting today. What's a podcast? What's a blog? How it will unfold, I don't know. Is there business opportunity there? Absolutely. Are there untapped areas within the world of design and decorating that we could be talking about? Just the way each of you has an individual perspective on life and your business and is expressed through your blog, the very same opportunities are there, I believe, in podcasting.
And another question, and Nick, if you could start, maybe Luann follow up about the monetization of this. And is it through sponsorships that are advertising on like the homepage for your podcast, or I know in yours you do a sponsor mention in the middle of the broadcast. What are the different channels that money can come in through a podcast that's established as yours are?
I think you can do it a lot of different ways. There's no rules. That's the great thing, right? Laurel talked about different ways to monetize your as a blogger. For me, what I've decided to do is folks sponsor episodes, and so they pay me a fee for every week that a show goes live. And so that's the way I have done it. I'm sure there's a million ways you could cut and slice that pie. I don't do like ads on my website. I just want to build relationships with companies that I want to work with, that I want to work with for a long period of time. And so that's kind of how I've decided to do it.
And what about you, Luann?
Mine is the same. I also have sponsors, Cherish, Business of Design, My Doma Studio, Cravat, and they all also are doing the same thing, a certain amount of dollar amount per episode, minimum episodes. But I did have a rather large company reach out a couple of weeks ago, same story as yours. Mine was American Standard, and they are listening to the podcast and they wanted to be involved. And it was interesting because obviously with a company that size, their marketing PR firm or whatever, their advertising firm is the one that reaches out. And she says to me, I'm interested in talking to you about how to sponsor your podcast, but I can't find any analytics on it or any demographics on it. And, how does it work? Like, I know how it does in the magazine industry. And I just said, well, welcome to the wild, wild west. Because it's kind of like what we want to do, we do, right? And but I think that's also a business lesson in there. I actually had Cravat Inc. as a sponsor before I even had a recorded show. And it's one of the things that you do as a business person. You believe in what you do, you know what you're going to do, you have confidence in it, and express it. So whether it's you as a designer expressing it to a potential client, to me, it was expressing to Cravat what I knew I could bring to this medium. And they understood it, and they agreed, and they've been sponsoring the show ever since. So it's the way that we've done it, but it is the Wild West. Be creative, think of a way. And the only other thing I would say about getting into podcasting and stuff is I agree with James. I agree that there is room for tons of us. Look at Nick was here before the both of us, and you call me if I'm wrong. I just think the more of us, the more it gets noticed and gets a thing, right? And but I would say I was talking to a woman yesterday that's here, and I met so many people. Jana, I was, and she was talking about starting a blog and thinking about it, and that's one of the reasons why she came to the conference. And in the conversation, I just said to her, I said, listen to me. If you love to write and if you love to blog and it, just rocks your world, then do it. And don't worry if it's a marketing arm for your business or not. Do it because you love it, and then the things fall into place. But you don't start a blog because somebody said to. It's not going to be a blog with 450,000 people unless you have the passion for it. And it's the same with podcasting. There's room for 20 million more of us, but you gotta love it. You have to enjoy it, because it's, at the end of the day, it's a job just like anything else. So I would just say, make sure it's the way that you would like to express yourself to your potential clients. And if it is, come on board and ask us for help and advice and contacts and resources.
And that passion helps define your message.
That's it.
Definitely.
You have to.
I'd like to just comment real quick. I don't think that podcasting is the next blog. I'm going to disagree with James, I'm sorry. But I don't think, it's like social media. Like, I'm not on every social media thing. Like, this isn't one more thing to just add to your plate, like, you've got to be doing this, like, in the next 5 years.
Right.
I honestly, I just don't think. I think there is enough room for everybody, but like you just said, Luann, you got to love it. Like, it's a lot of work. Like, it's like all of us put hours in every single week, and it's really, really hard every week.
Just like a good blog takes a lot of work. Like
Yes.
somebody like Amber's blog, what'd she say? It was 17% of her day or something. I mean, that's a lot of day.
Okay, well, we're going to have to wrap this up. We're running short on time. This has been fascinating, and we so appreciate you sharing your insights. How many people want to be on one of these podcasts?
Well,
You
come
have all
on,
of your business
give us the
cards ready.
cards.
Maybe during our next break, you guys can all connect with our wonderful speakers here.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you guys so much. Adam?
Thank you. Are we done?
We've been dismissed.